Before we get into it, do yourself a favor right now and smash that like button, hit subscribe, and tap that notification bell so you never miss a single Blue Jays breakdown on this channel. We are building something real here and you genuinely do not want to miss what is coming. Alright, now buckle up Blue Jays fans, because what happened at Rogers Center on Friday night was not just a baseball game. It was a resurrection. It was a party. It was a reminder of exactly why we all fell in love with this team in the first place. And somehow, impossibly, beautifully, it all started with somebody taping a handwritten note to a jacket hanging in the dugout. Yes, you read that correctly. The Toronto Blue Jays were so desperate to break out of their home run drought that someone in that clubhouse sat down, grabbed a piece of paper, and wrote a literal Dear John letter to the home run jacket. The note read, and we are quoting as closely as we can hear, "Dear Jacket, would you please wake up? We need homers." That is it. That is the message. Somewhere between a prayer, a cry for help, and the most wholesome thing you will ever see in a major league dugout, the Blue Jays reached out to a piece of fabric for salvation. And folks, the jacket listened. The jacket absolutely delivered. Because before the night was over, the Toronto Blue Jays had erupted for 10 runs on 14 hits, sent the Minnesota Twins home with a 10-4 defeat, ended a 6-game losing streak that had been strangling this fanbase, set a season high for runs scored, and witnessed not one but 2 home runs, including one of the most memorable first big league home runs you will ever see from a young man named Brandon Valenzuela. If this is what happens when you write letters to inanimate objects, then somebody get a pen and start writing to the bullpen arms on the injured list right now, because this franchise is not done communicating with its equipment. But in all seriousness, let's talk about what this win actually meant, because it was not just a box score. This was a statement. This was a Toronto Blue Jays team that had been absolutely battered to start the 2026 season, ravaged by injuries, struggling offensively, losing games they had no business losing to teams that finished with over 100 losses last year, finally standing up and showing everyone what this lineup looks like when the switch gets flipped. The Blue Jays came into Friday night having lost 6 consecutive games. 6. They had looked helpless at the plate during stretches of that skid, chasing bad pitches, making soft contact, and stranding runners with absolutely maddening regularity. The energy around this team was getting dark fast, especially for a club that played in the World Series just last year and arrived in 2026 with genuine championship aspirations. So yes, one regular season win in April against the Twins does not make everything right. But you better believe it matters. You better believe the players knew it mattered. And you better believe the way they did it matters even more. Let's set the scene here properly, because the first inning was not pretty. Patrick Corbin, in his very first start as a Toronto Blue Jay, walked out to the mound for his debut and promptly allowed Ryan Jeffers to launch a 3-run home run in the first inning. Just like that, it was 3-0 Minnesota before the Blue Jays had even gotten comfortable in their seats. Now this is where a team that has lost 6 in a row could very easily fold. The narrative writes itself. You could almost hear the groan across Blue Jays Nation. Here we go again. The hits kept coming from Minnesota too, as Brooks Lee added a solo shot in the 3rd inning to push it to 4-0. 4-0, folks. Down 4 runs with Patrick Corbin, a 36-year-old guy who was not even on a major league roster a week ago, on the mound for his Blue Jays debut. A man who made exactly 1 start in single-A ball before Toronto called him up out of pure desperation because their rotation has been absolutely decimated by injuries this season. Shane Bieber out. Jose Berrios out. Trey Yesevich out. Cody Ponce out for the season with a knee injury. Max Scherzer dealing with a forearm issue. The Blue Jays basically had to call a number in their contacts that they probably never expected to call and say, "Hey Patrick, hope you have been keeping yourself ready, because we kind of need you right now." And for the record, Corbin responded. He did not have his best stuff by any stretch of the imagination. He allowed those 2 home runs, hit a couple of batters, and was pulled after 4 innings on 90 pitches. But he also had long stretches where he was almost completely unhittable, mixing his pitches, working the inside corner against right-handed hitters, and showing the kind of competitive craftiness that has kept him employed in this league for over a decade. 4 innings, 4 earned runs, all on 2 home runs with 6 hits, 3 strikeouts, and a walking away from the mound with his head held high. That is not a disaster. That is, honestly, not bad at all when you consider what this man was being asked to do. The Blue Jays needed someone to bridge a gap while their real starters heal up, and on Friday night, in his debut, Patrick Corbin was salvageable. That matters more right now than you might think. But now let's talk about the good stuff, because the bottom of the fourth inning at Rogers Center on Friday night was one of the most fun innings the Blue Jays have played all season. Down 4-0 with the crowd getting anxious and the season teetering on yet another demoralizing defeat, the Blue Jays offense woke up in the most explosive possible way. It started with Vladimir Guerrero Jr., because of course it did. Vladdy Jr. ripped an opposite field double that had the right fielder completely turned around and confused, one of those balls that just jumps off the bat and finds the gap before anyone has time to react. That brought up Jesus Sanchez, who has been arguably the brightest spot of this entire early season, and Sanchez did exactly what he has been doing all year long. He raked a double down into right field and scored Guerrero, suddenly making it 4-1 and putting the Blue Jays right back in the conversation. That kicked off a rally that felt like a dam breaking. Davis Schneider, who has been one of the most reliable and underrated Blue Jays hitters through these early weeks, followed with a rare opposite field double of his own, scoring Sanchez and tightening it to 4-2 in an instant. The Rogers Center crowd, which had been holding its collective breath for what felt like forever, started to buzz. You could feel it. Andres Jimenez kept the line moving with a single that plated Schneider, pulling the Blue Jays within one at 4-3 with the bases loaded and the atmosphere absolutely electric. And then came the moment of the night. Actually, let's be honest, it might be one of the moments of this entire Blue Jays season. With 2 outs and the bases loaded, a 25-year-old catcher named Brandon Valenzuela stepped into the box against Simeon Woods Richardson. Valenzuela, who had only made his major league debut last week after Alejandro Kirk went down with a thumb injury that requires surgery. Valenzuela, who was in AAA a week ago. Valenzuela, who most casual Blue Jays fans probably had not even had a chance to fully learn his name yet. He stepped up with the Blue Jays trailing by 1 in a 5-run inning with 14 hits on the way, with the home run jacket watching from the dugout wall with that little handwritten note still pinned to it, and he absolutely crushed a 2-run home run off Simeon Woods Richardson to give the Blue Jays their first lead of the game at 5-4. The crowd erupted. The dugout erupted. And post-game, Valenzuela said something that is going to stick with Blue Jays fans for a long time. He said he did not even feel the contact. He said it was smooth, a good swing. And then he described getting back to the dugout, and Vladdy waiting there with the home run jacket, ready to drape it over his shoulders for the very first time in his big league career. And he called it an amazing feeling that he will never forget. There is not a single Blue Jays fan on the planet who did not smile watching that. A kid who was in the minors last week, hitting his first career big league home run, with the jacket waiting for him. That is the stuff they make highlight reels out of. That is why we watch this game. The Blue Jays were not done. Not even close. Because in the 5th inning, the jacket got some more action almost immediately when Dalton Varsho stepped to the plate leading off against former Blue Jay Anthony Banda, who came in from the bullpen for Minnesota. On a 1-1 pitch, Varsho put a swing on it and launched a no-doubt blast over the wall in right center field for his first home run of the 2026 season. And here is the part that makes it even more special. That was the 100th home run of Dalton Varsho's major league career. 100 career home runs in the big leagues, number 100 happening right there at Rogers Center in a game where the Blue Jays desperately needed every single thing they could get. It made it 6-4 Toronto, and at that point you could feel the air completely leave the Twins' dugout. The comeback was complete. The jacket had woken up. And the Blue Jays were rolling. The rest of the offense just kept piling on throughout the game in ways that should have this entire fanbase feeling genuinely encouraged. Ernie Clement doubled down the left field line in the 6th inning, knocking in Davis Schneider for the 7th run. George Springer then reached second base on a play shortly after and scored Clement to push it to 8-4. And then Davis Schneider, who deserves every bit of praise he gets in this video, continued to have himself an absolute night with another single in the 7th inning that drove in a runner and kept the scoreboard moving. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. put the cherry on top of the whole thing with a 2-run double late in the game that sent Brandon Valenzuela home and pushed the final score to 10-4. Vladdy had 3 hits and an RBI on the night. Schneider had 2 hits, scored twice, and drove in a run. 9 of Toronto's 14 hits were for extra bases. 7 doubles, 2 home runs, 10 runs scored. The Blue Jays did not just win this baseball game. They completely obliterated it. Now let's take a moment to talk about the pitching performance after Corbin departed, because this is a part of the story that does not get enough attention but absolutely deserves some. Tommy Nance came in after Corbin and worked through a couple of scoreless outs to keep things stable.